Hey, everybody, welcome back once again to Retro Wrestling with Gene Jackson. And we got another great interview in store for you this evening. If you're familiar with me at all, you know I'm a big fan of Continental Wrestling. You know I'm a big fan of Memphis Wrestling. And my guest this week wrestled for both promotions, plus some other ones. I'm really excited about this interview. We've been trying to get this going off and on for quite a while now, so it's cool that we finally made it happen. So right now, welcome my guest, the one and only, the DI, Mr. Bob Carter, as he was known in the Continental Wrestling Federation. DI, how you doing, sir?
I'm well, Gene. How you doing, pal?
Man, I'm doing good. Like I said, I was always a huge fan of Continental, Memphis, and you were a big part of both of those places. But before we get on to that, I guess the obvious place to start, were you a big wrestling fan growing up?
Yeah, I grew up in Boston, so we had the old WWWF, and we had, up there everything was very broken down by your ethnicity.
Right.
So you had, the Italians with Bruno Sammartino. You had the Puerto Ricans with Pedro Morales. You had, you had the Cowboys, with the Blackjacks, Lanza Mulligan. You had the Indians with Chief Strongbow. So, everything was, was a little bit different. So I went to college for a year, and we had a radio station at the college, Framingham State, and myself and another dude did a wrestling talk show at the college. And so that was the kind of the extent of wrestling, what I mean, as far as my fandom.
Nice. So that's kind of the precursor to the type of thing we're doing right now. So you're no stranger to this. Was Bruno as over in Boston as he was in New York?
Oh yeah. I mean, ridiculously over.
I mean, I know us fans in the South, we heard the legend of Bruno Sammartino, and then years later you get a hold of the tapes and most of it are just like, I don't know, man, I don't really get it. But same for the Northern people, hear about our love for Jerry Lawler, and then they watch Jerry Lawler and go, I don't get it. So I think it's just, you had to be there type thing, right?
Yeah, it was definitely, I mean, you got to realize that back, in the territory days, I mean, back, you got to realize that New York was a territory then. And, they knew their, they knew their markets, and it was, it was just a different, obviously a different time and space. And, Memphis, back then they were a little man territory, and they were doing all kinds of crazy stuff. And New York had always kind of been the big man territory. And it was just, it's definitely, you could definitely do a study on the counterculture, I guess.
Right. Like you said, I know it was heavily, the ethnicity weighed in heavily, and the different groups would support their guy, especially when they were going for the title, challenging for the title. It was very different than what we grew up with here. At what point were you like, all right, I want to do this. I need to figure out how to get my foot in the door, because this wasn't like, like it is now. If you can get it, I can wake up tomorrow morning and go, man, I want to be a wrestler and be in a ring somewhere by next weekend, probably.
Yeah, nobody pay you to do it. But anyway,
no.
It's kind of a, I don't know, it's kind of a funny story, I guess. I was I had an opportunity. I was in the Marine Corps. When I got out of school, I went in the Marine Corps, and I was when I got out of the Marine Corps, while I was in the Marine Corps, I boxed some. So I got an opportunity to go down to Evander Holyfield's camp in 1985, which was right after the 84 Olympics, when he was, at that time, he was a cruiserweight. So I go down there, and I took a buddy of mine. I was living in Charlotte at the time. I took a buddy of mine, and we went down, and I talked to Lou Duva, and I, said, "What's the deal?" And they said it was going to be $1,000 a round, and blah blah blah. And I'm like, okay, that's interesting. Let me watch him work out. And I watched him hit the heavy bag for about 5 minutes, and I said to my buddy, "Let's go." And he said, "Bobby," he says, $1,000 a round. I said, "It's a $3,000 career. This guy's going to kill me." He put about 3/4 of his arm into the bag. I mean, my God, dude, I ain't doing this. So I went back to Charlotte, and I was working in the gym business, and I was pretty good at it as selling memberships. And one of the companies that I worked for, they had a consulting division where they would send out people like me to help other gyms grow. And the gym that I went to was was partly owned by Gene Ligon, who Gene is, was one of the Thunder Feet, and pretty well known in the Carolinas.
Right.
And so I went with him a couple of times to TVs to, kind of watch and all that, and thought, yeah, I can do this.
Right.
And then so we had a tryout at Nelson Royal's farm, ranch, and there was 250 people showed up that day, and 4 of us actually made it. And man, there were guys showed up with their valets showed up in their kits. I mean, all kinds of stuff. It was some comical crap, man. And and like the tryout itself was like, that shit was no joke. We did a 5-mile. I'll never forget this as long as I live. We did a 5-mile run around the cornfield in July in Mooresville, North Carolina, which was basically just outside of Charlotte.
Right.
And so 5-mile run in the cornfield. Then it was a 1.5 mile shuttle run up and down this hill. And then you had to carry the guy on your back, fireman's carry the guy up and down that hill. And then he had to carry you up and down that hill. And then, I forgot the 500 free body squats, the Hindu squats. That was at the beginning. And then you did 1 push-up, sprint 50 yards, 2 push-ups, sprint 50 yards, 3 push-ups, up to 25 push-ups. That's 250 push-ups total if anybody's doing the math at home. And then you got in the ring with somebody that knew how to really wrestle, amateur wrestle, and they tied you up like a Bachman pretzel with your head up your ass. And did I say anything about like a break or a drink or water or anything? Yeah, no, because I didn't get one. Yeah, I mean, it was some insane it was insane. And like I said, there was 250 Yahoos showed up. It was pretty, and I'm doing it like I still can remember some of the faces. I couldn't tell you anybody's name, but it was pretty comical.
So some of these guys are already showing up in gimmicks and stuff.
Oh yeah, they were ready. They thought they were going to have a match and show everybody how good they were. It was funny as hell.
That's tremendous. I wish somebody had been recording that. That'd be a worthwhile tape these days to watch that.
Well, you got to realize that so I was broke. I got broke in by Gene Anderson and Nelson Roll. So like at one point in the proceedings, some mouthy guy kept running his pie hole, and Gene Anderson told Gene Ligon, "Here, drag him over here." And he brought him over towards the thing, and Gene, absolutely knocked the living shit out of him. It was. Gene and Ole were famous for their quote unquote tryouts.
Yeah.
And you got to realize that's 250 people at like $250. It was a good day for them.
Shoot, yeah. And if anybody makes it like you four did, then that's just a bonus. But if not, you're going to the bank. So either way.
Yeah. So it was insane. It was insane.
I got the opportunity to be around Ole a few times at like the Charlotte convention and even met Lars and talked to him briefly, but I never got a chance to be around Gene Anderson, and there really wasn't a lot of footage of him from his day. What can you tell me about Gene Anderson? Was his personality similar to Ole's, or were they different?
They were both grumpy fuckers in general, but Gene was all business, man, and Gene also, if you knew Gene, he had one of the biggest hearts you'd ever get to know. But his son Brad, he came along after I did, and he wrestled some, but Gene was a tough son of a bitch. So he had a stroke at some point. He couldn't wrestle anymore. He had a stroke, I guess. He was working as a deputy sheriff for a little bit. And then the Crockett's had him setting up all the interviews for, back then when we did interviews for TV, you did them, away from the arena. It wasn't, like today, all the interviews are in the ring or whatever, and sometimes with the opponent. Back then it was, you didn't see the opponent until you got to, whatever town it was. Anyway, so one night in the dressing room, they had the Road Warriors, and Gene had the test of strength with the hands,
Yeah.
And Gene had one Road Warrior in one hand and one Road Warrior with the other hand, and they were both on the ground screaming. He had that country boy strong, like you read about,
Right.
But pretty great guy, and I miss him. I miss him every day.
So if the tryout was that tough, how was the actual training? How long did you train for?
I trained. Yeah, I didn't get my first match for like 8 months. And we used to train a couple of days a week and on the weekends. And it was one day during the week, and on the weekends, I remember I actually ended up living at the training facility. Nelson had a ranch and a riding arena, and he boarded horses, and he had a Western store there in Mooresville. and I lived in a trailer with the furrier. Is that how you say it? The guy that does the horseshoes.
Yeah.
Anyway, so my job was that I mucked stalls and fed the horses every morning, and that was my tuition for wrestling school. He took care of me, and but the training was brutal. Gene, he was famous for saying something like, "That's the drizzling shits, kid." and Nelson was probably one of the most talented workers. He was in his 50s then, but even in his 50s he could go, and I mean, and he had a motor on him that was just insane. And the pace, and the psychology, and we were trained different than the Gene. What was that Jackson guy's name? Not you, the other one.
Mike
Jackson. Who used to line up guys to go get the crap pounded out of them at TVs.
Yeah.
We were taught how to work, and so it was totally a different level,
And you could see that watching the TV then, when guys like you and Gene Ligon and guys like that could work, to go in and have a match. I mean, you already knew how it was going to end, but there was a decent match on the way there. And then those guys that were just like punching bags that, the Road Warriors just come in and kick the shit out of in, 30 seconds or whatever. Or Ronnie Garvin would stretch them for an uncomfortable amount of time.
Yeah. I mean, it was, I was fortunate in the sense that I only did, my very first match, as an example, I was Gene Anderson called me and said, "Hey, they need a guy under a mask that nobody's ever seen before, as the my dog wants to come involved."
That's cool. We can get a cameo there.
Yeah, here you go, Bogey.
There he is.
Say hi, buddy. That's Bogey.
Dog.
He's huge. He's 110 pounds. Thinks he's a lap dog. Anyway, so Gene calls me and says, "Hey, Bobby, so we need a guy, big guy nobody's ever seen before under a mask, for TV. You're going to be the Big Red Machine." And it was the day that they turned Dickie Murdoch heel, with Dusty and Nikita.
I just watched that a week ago. No kidding. That popped up on my YouTube, and I just watched it like a week ago. I had no idea that was you under that mask. Wow.
Yeah, send me that YouTube. I've been looking for it. I can't find it.
Yeah, I'll find it.
And anyway, yeah, they so I went in, took a big bump for Nikita, and interesting story. Side note was I lived with Nikita, so for a number of months. His wife had passed away, and so I stayed there at his house.
We'll return after these messages.
If you love old school wrestling, the Retro Wrestling Archive Patreon is where the real treasure is. Get early access to all your favorite Retro Wrestling Archive podcasts and articles before they hit the public feed. Unlock exclusive Patreon-only shows, watch-along videos, and bonus content you won't find anywhere else. And coming soon, the Retro Wrestling Archive Google Drive is expanding in a big way with even more classic wrestling footage, rare media, and archival material for true wrestling history fans. If you're serious about preserving the history of the territories, this is where you belong. Join the Retro Wrestling Archive Patreon today and step inside the archive.
Hey guys, Ray Russell here. Lots of new stuff happening here at WrestleCopia. If you haven't checked out our website at WrestleCopia.com, it's a great way to keep up with the latest episodes of all of your favorite Copia programming, from the Wrestling Memory Grenade to Regional Wrestling with the Territory Talk, the Wrestling Stoop with the legendary Bob Roop, and of course all of those programs also available at your favorite podcast streaming platforms. And if you want to stay up to date with everything going on in the Copia world, all the latest news, random thoughts, fun videos, pictures, and more, make sure to join the more than 33,000 followers over at Facebook.com/Wrestling Grenade. Don't be left out. And last but definitely not least, it's what keeps the entire machine going. I'm talking about Patreon.com/WrestleCopia. We appreciate your support in helping us pay the bills to keep the WrestleCopia Podcast Network running and enabling us to continue to bring you all the quality programming that we offer.
Tired of the same boring wrestling podcast? Need something with attitude, chaos, and maybe just a little cussing? That's STSPod.club, and we got it all covered. We've got wrestling weirdness with WTF News Desk, 5-minute time limit, and the Southern Fried Brain of me, BT, stirring the whole ship. We also have Rolling into Memphis every week about the current Memphis wrestling. Interviews, hot takes, and wrestling outrageousness so wild it might get you banned in 12 states. That's right, it's SDSPod.club, or search all podcast catchers for Shooting the Shiznit, where wrestling podcasts grow chest hair. Not sure what that meant. Love my mama.
But yeah, so that was my first match, and then I got booked with Mario Savoldi and Angelo Savoldi up in New England, up in northern New England, and worked up there, and then and they I was like a kind of a, I was green, but they took care of me. I was kind of a mid-carder up there, and then I went up to Calgary and worked for Stu Hart and the Dungeon and all that nonsense.
Yeah.
But to say, I say that to say that, so I never had to go and, get jobbed to death and get beat, just never had to get, go in there and get, clobbered on TV. I was fortunate to get out and, actually get to work, and got a chance to, learn differently.
How was Calgary? I mean, I hear like the trips were pretty rough, and of course the weather's brutal depending on what time of year you're there. But
I don't think it's ever good. But the truth is, I wasn't there particularly long. I was there just a few months, partly because it was. The timing is everything, and my timing, honestly, in this business wasn't good because the territories were slowly getting milked to death by Vince, and the money was bad, and the trips were long, and but Calgary, I'll tell you, this is one of the funniest stories I still remember. So I I'm wrestling then as Irish Bobby O'Brien.
Okay.
When I left Carolinas and went up to Savoldi's, I was Irish Bobby O'Brien. And so I get booked into Calgary, and I'm there, I don't know, a little bit. And I'm working babyface, which I'm never been a very good babyface. And the other baby faces are like Owen Hart and Ben Basrab and Benoit and Pillman and Bruce Hart were tag champions, and then we had like the Ben McDonald and Bulldog Bob Brown. Bad News Allen was there. So we had a good crew. Anyway, So Stu Hart comes to the dressing room one night, and he says, O'Brien, we're going to change your gimmick. We're going to call you Father O'Brien. We're going to send you to the ring in a cassock carrying the Bible. And when the other fella gets the best of you, you're going to pull out the brass knucks and give him a whack. I looked at him and I said, fuck you, I'm fucking Catholic. I said, I'm going to get hit by fucking lightning. I said, what do you got, your fucking mind? So I didn't do it. I should have done it. Honestly, God, I should have done it. I think if I did it, I probably would have been in New York already. But it was that was pretty comical.
Wow.
But,
because usually, wild gimmicks like that get attributed to Memphis and stuff. You don't hear a lot of that out of Stu Hart. That's a great story.
Yeah, they did some pretty crazy stuff though out there too. Bruce was kind of running things, and he was kind of a piece of work.
I was gonna say he had some different ideas, didn't he?
Yeah. A lot of stuff with Bruce, I think, honestly, was that I think he thought he should have been Brett. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But that was a strange ass family, dude. Like Stu hooked me in his kitchen, and he had these cats all over the fucking place, and like in the creases of your counter, sometimes, like, well, it shouldn't happen, but sometimes it does. You get a little bit of the grease in there. You know what I mean? And well, at Stu's house, it was pretty much regular, and he would stick his knives in there. Like that's where he would keep his knives, And dude, he had me. I kept fighting it. I fought him off. I can't tell you how many times. And and then did a few workouts downstairs in the basement in the dungeon, and it was that was a little bit more than anybody signed up for.
I can imagine.
When you stayed there, so the real funny part of the story is, so I'm leaving northern New England. I had been on the road with Paul Vachon, the butcher.
Yeah.
And I had to report to Calgary in a certain amount of days or whatever. And so I had some time. I had like a week off, whatever. So I had to hold on. I got to get the dog outside.
Okay.
So I had to take I had this 1981 Toyota Corolla, little white car. Anyway, so I went up to went up to Montreal with Butcher stayed at his mother's house at the family farm, and I just had a lovely, couple of days, and then it was time to leave, and Butcher told me how to go, and not to drive across Canada because of the cost, go down through the States and then go up. Well, I got about as far as Buffalo, and I blew the transmission.
Oh.
So I bought a bus ticket. I took a bus from Buffalo to Calgary, 55 hours across goddamn Canada.
Oh my God.
I mean, it was awful.
Ooh.
And I get to Calgary, and I call Stu. I says, "Hey, Stu," I said, "It's O'Brien. I'm here. I had to take a bus. The car broke down." And he said, "Who?" I said, "Stu, this is no time to be fucking with me." He's like, all right, I'll send my son to get you. So he sends Smith down to pick me up. Smith takes me to the St. Regis Hotel in downtown Calgary. $65 a week. This is in 1986, I guess. So he takes me to this hotel. The hotel had a bathtub in the middle of the bedroom. The bathroom was across the hall, and it was a shared experience for a shower and a shit.
Oh my God.
And if you looked out your window just right, you could see the Native Americans stabbing one another on a nightly basis after having been fully imbibed entirely too much whiskey. So, yeah, that was an experience not to be repeated.
Good Lord. So did you go right from Calgary down to Alabama?
Yeah, pretty much. I had got a hold of Robert Fuller. Back then, when I went in, Fuller and Golden and Armstrong essentially owned the territory. Fuller's brother Ron was operating Knoxville, sort of, at that time, and not quite in opposition, but it wasn't completely integrated. So I had kind of come up with this TI gimmick, and I pitched it to him, and and he needed a big heel, and he and they everybody they had was kind of looked all kind of similar, you know what I mean? So I was different, at that time. So I was fortunate, and they brought me in, and Gordon Soley was on the desk, running the TV, and he really got, Gordon Soley got me over down there, which was kind of cool. But so I went down there, and then at some point in the proceedings, they sold it to David Woods, who owned the TV station in Montgomery, and Eddie Gilbert and Paul Heyman / Dangerously showed up, and they were running things.
Yeah, I do a weekly podcast with Doug Gilbert and Tommy Rich, and so of course there's a lot of talk of Eddie on there with Doug and everything. And I know Doug was in as Nightmare Freddy. He tagged with Ken after the Nightmare split.
Doug was my tag team partner in Memphis.
Yes, we're going to get to that. He always speaks very highly of you. So I remember the first time I saw the DI on my TV for Continental, I was like, hey, all right, this is going to be interesting. This dude seems pretty tough. Because like I said, you were a big guy. You stood out amongst, the Ken Waynes and Dutch Mantels and a lot of the guys that were there at the time. And then enter Mark Young, who would eventually be the breakdancing stepson or whatever relation he was to Chief Jay.
Yeah, he adopted. He was his son. Mark was adopted. Yeah. He was his adopted son. And oh, God bless that kid.
How was that presented to you? Is it like, hey, we've got you your private pile right out of the gate, or did that just kind of evolve over time? Or
it was funny. They did. It was cool because they did. It kind of evolved because we did a lot of TV. Like when we would do TVs, you're doing 3 weeks in a row.
Right.
So, we used to shoot TV in Birmingham on Mondays, and so, but if I'm not mistaken, anyway, they took. They told me about, Young is going to do this, and you're going to go out and engage him and, try to recruit him to the honor guard. And then, and so it was over a period of maybe 6 weeks of television.
Yeah.
It was, I was thrilled because, they were putting some time on me,
Yeah.
and letting me they really just let me go. I have never been handed a piece of paper and told talk. You know what I mean? Never so they just kind of let me do it, and that was a lot of fun. That was a lot of fun.
Yeah, it really showcased you and your character. And Gordon, like you mentioned, Gordon was very good at playing off of you. The interplay between you and Gordon was always, fun. And the way that played out with Mark Young, you beat him a couple of times, and then eventually you draft him into the honor guard more or less. Then you shave his head, and eventually becomes your tag team partner. And then we get Randy Colley involved, who's Detroit Demolition. How did you and Randy get along? How'd that go?
Man, he's like my big brother, man. He would call our tag matches from the apron. He taught me a lot about tag team wrestling. And I got a master class, every night, and then to be able to, I ended up living. He had a gym in Alex City, Alabama, aptly called Randy's Gym, and it was a 1-floor place, kind of in a quasi old. It was an old school commercial kind of building, sorta. But this is in Alabama in the 80s. And anyway, he had the gym had an office in it, and we fixed the office into what we called the DI hut. And I had a bed and a thing in there, and his dog Thor, who was this giant German Shepherd, he came and lived with me, and
nice.
And then his son Robbie, who now is like one of the most successful realtors down in Orange Beach, Alabama area down on the coast.
Yeah.
And Robbie was in high school at the time, and Robbie took my 1974 it was a 1974 Cadillac and with the brome top, the leatherish top.
Yeah.
But the leatherette top had blown the fuck off somewhere in Alabama. And he proceeded to paint the car camouflage. So
Nice.
the DI would show up in a camouflage Cadillac whenever I rolled into town.
Oh, that's awesome.
So Randy and his family were very very good to me.
Yeah, you guys were tag team champions, and like you said, man, you had who better to learn tag team wrestling from than Randy Colley? And you got a veteran in your corner, and then you look across the ring, and you've got a very, very, very green Sid Vicious as Lord Humongous, and his cousin, allegedly, who's only about a year and a half in the business, Shane Douglas. How did you enjoy those matches?
I think I just recovered from one of them. Sid, so you gotta now. When I first got there to Continental, when the Fullers were in charge, Sid was a heel, and with Bruno,
Yes.
Harvey Whippleman, some people know him as, and I guess unknowns to me, also famous for babysitting Dwayne Johnson. But so I traveled with them for the first 3 months, before all the shenanigans started. So, I knew Sid pretty well. And Sid was so strong and so strong and heavy, and didn't really at that point didn't really know, didn't have a lot of psychology and didn't have a lot of training and all that. I mean, he became a halfway decent worker from what I understand, beyond me. But dude, he dropped that leg on you, and you wanted to die. One night when we turned him babyface, right?
Mm-hmm.
And he started doing like babyface shit, and he throws me to the corner, and he jumps up on the second rope, like the baby faces do, right? Like if he was Steve Armstrong or something. and he goes to punch me in the top of the head, and I walked out right on between his legs because I could. I mean, I'm 6'4", you're 6'9". You don't need to step on the second rope to hit me on the top of the head. So I go out right in between his legs, and we get back to the dressing rooms, and he's like, why did you do that? I said, dude, nobody believes that shit. They're not going to believe that you needed to step on the second rope to hit me. Just stay on the ground,
Yeah.
And here's a side Sid story for you. We're on the beach in Panama City, and it was like a day off or something, and we were, everybody had a few beers, and we were having fun. And those boats that do the parasailing?
Yeah.
They pull you off the beach, and up with the like the kite, whatever, like with the parachute on. All right, so we got Sid talked into this, and and he respected the fact that 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 I've been in the military and all that, and so I told him all about well, make sure you're rigged up right, you'll be all right, And so I told the guy in the boat, I said, when I give you the Iggy, I said, you fucking hit that goddamn accelerator and go. He's like, okay. So I'm checking Sid's harness. And I said, yeah, okay, this is good. I said, so I'm getting ready to give the guy the Iggy. And I said, Sid, this shit's only good for up to 250 pounds. He's screaming as he's coming off the fucking beach. The boat's pulling him, and he's fucking screaming, "I'm gonna kill you!"
That's tremendous.
Shit was hilarious.
Bruno just told some stories in his book that he loved Sid and they were close, but like when they were traveling together, and I'm asking this to see if he witnessed any of this. He said that one of Sid's favorite things to do was just to screw with him when they were traveling together.
Oh, yeah.
Stuff to just drive Bruno nuts.
Oh yeah, he made him absolutely insane, absolutely insane. Yeah. But Bruno. All right. So here's the backside of that. So probably on the same trip. I don't know. We're at the hotel, right? Mm-hmm. And well, the night before we were in what was it, Florence, Alabama, or some god awful place. And he said, so Bruno had a bad habit of not showering. Oh. So we had decided that was enough. So we washed him with the fire hose. And anyhow, so that then one night, the next night we're in Panama City, and we're in the hotel, and we're all hanging out and having fun, and I gimmicked up Bruno's drink and gave him a half a halcyon, which is what they give the mental patients to put them down and calm them down. So I knocked him out and put him on a fucking raft in the pool at the hotel, and I sat out there with him, because I didn't want him to drown. Right. And when he woke up, he rolled over into the pool, and it was pretty funny. But anyway,
poor Bruno.
Yeah, but he was a character. I haven't seen him in however long. 30 something years, but anyway.
So coming in and working under Robert Fuller and Bob Armstrong, and then David Woods buying it out, Eddie coming in and booking. How different was it, Robert Fuller and Bob style compared to Eddie? And did you have a preference?
I was just glad to work, man. So and I was fortunate. They both of them took care of me. Like when the Fullers were there, and so they'd be in the main event. It was a lot of 6-man tags, and I ended up being their third, and I would take the falls, and but I was learning, I was learning, I was eating that up. And then, when Eddie came and he gave me a chance, because I could talk, and they realized pretty quickly that I could hold my own, talking. I might not have been, I was never going to be Luthez wrestling, but I could talk. And they, matter of fact, one of your heroes down there in that part of the world, Mr. Austin Idol. So we're doing, we're in Birmingham at the old farm center, the fairgrounds, and we're doing the promos, and it was it used to be the heel and then the baby would go, the heel and then the baby. And so we were promoting something that we were going to be, where Idol was going to be, opposite us. And we're about 3 promos in, and Idol looks at whoever, I think it may have been Curtis or one of those people that was running the back, and he said, let him go after me. He said, I can't follow this shit. Because I was ripping them, like, I always tried to bring in some kind of current events or whatever, it's funny. I work at a golf course now where I'm, mowing rough, and I'm still thinking about promos, like I still. So, but anyway, so both of those people that were running things, it was very different. I mean, but, of course, Eddie was, Eddie had a vision for the business that, was way ahead of his time. I mean, Eddie's one of the few people from those days that I think could have worked today. You know what I mean? Like his mind for the business was so brilliant. Yeah. And, but he really let my character develop and kind of, he just kind of let me go. And, then the Fullers were good to me in the sense that they gave me a place to work, and I've always been, grateful for them. And, I've never been able to I've tried a few times to reach out to those folks and say thank you, you know what I mean? But I never really connected with any of them.
Memphis wrestling changed in 1998, and now we're going back to relive it all. Gene Jackson, Rob Helt, and Brian Trammell are launching the brand new Retro Wrestling Review Power Pro Wrestling podcast, and they're watching and reviewing the entire run of TV5 Memphis Power Pro Wrestling from 1998 to 2001, every twist, every turn, every wild main event. From the debut episode to the final broadcast, they're reliving it all. New episodes drop on YouTube and all podcast platforms every Saturday morning, with early access exclusively on Patreon. And it all premieres Saturday, April 18th, 2026, exactly 28 years to the day Power Pro first hit TV5 in 1998. Power Pro is back. Well, sort of. Follow us over at facebook.com/retro wrestling review and follow along with us. We'd love to hear your thoughts as well.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Give Me Back My Pro Wrestling, the podcast that's based on the old school but can still help you find the good stuff from today. Jimmy Street and the Plastic Chic, Jared, are the undisputed tag team champions of the wrestling podcast world. From thought-provoking topics to superstar interviews to action figure expertise. This team does it all, and all they ask is, give me back my pro wrestling! Every other Thursday, wherever you listen to podcasts.
Relive the glory days of Memphis wrestling with the Retro Wrestling Review USWA podcast. Each week, we go back in time to review USWA Championship Wrestling from the 1990s, episode by episode. Join us for watch-alongs, behind-the-scenes stories, and exclusive interviews with people who were there and lived it. Whether you grew up watching it or you're discovering it for the first time, this podcast is your ringside seat to Memphis wrestling history. It's all a part of the WrestleCopia Podcast Network. Listen now at uswapodcast.com.
I was always a huge fan of your promos, and I would always argue with my friends, because they were like, "Oh, he's like Sergeant Slaughter." I'm like, dude, he could have been Arlie Ermey's role in Full Metal Jacket. I mean, that's the sergeant he is. That's that's who I see him, man. I don't see him anywhere in the vein of Sergeant Slaughter. Like Sergeant Slaughter wasn't even really in the army, dude. Like he's not
Yeah, he
even a
was. Yeah,
military guy.
but Sergeant Slaughter wasn't like. Anyway, he wasn't real.
Right.
You know, I will say that my stuff was as authentic as, you know, it was over the top, but it was, you know, it was authentic, and I mixed in a little chicken shit heel in there, you know, from time to time, but also, you know, if I needed to, you know, be tough or whatever, you know, I mean, you know, it's funny. I meant to tell you this story before. So your namesake, Mike Jackson. So one night, this is with Fuller's, and we're in whatever Mike Jackson's hometown is. I forget the name of where he's from. Anyway,
he'll claim whatever town he's in on any given night because he's so carny. But anyway,
yeah. So whatever town he was that we were in, allegedly it was his hometown. Anyway, so Robert sends the finish over to him, says, you know, the DI will take you out with his finish in, you know, 8 minutes or something.
Yeah.
And he sends it back and says, no, it's my hometown. You know, can't beat me here.
Oh my God.
And I looked at Robert and I said, what's he want? He said, he wants to go Broadway. I said, all right. I said, send it back. It's going to be the longest 15 minutes of your life. So I get in the ring, and you know, I lock up with him, and I said to him, I said, protect yourself. And I proceeded to pound the living shit out of him for what amounted to about 13 and a half minutes. And the boys all came out of the dressing room. And you know how rare that is.
Yes.
So the boys are all out of the dressing room in the back of the building watching. And I lit this. I mean, he must have, you know, I invented Suplex City. Like it was, like I suplexed that dude every which way but loose. And his chest was beat to hell. I mean, I just pounded the living crap out of him. And at about, like I said, about 13 and a half, whatever, I just walked out of the ring and just walked back to the dressing room. What are they going to say? Was he going to say that he won by count out? I mean, you know what I mean? Like, I mean, everybody in the building and the dressing room knew he didn't win nothing but an ass kicking.
That's awesome.
But I've always been fascinated by the Mike Jackson stories. You ain't seen nothing yet.
Old Uncle Mike. Yeah, hey, I've been witness to a lot of his more recent stuff. Not like recent, but I mean in the last 15 years I've been on shows with him and stuff, and just sat there and awe at some of the shit I've seen him do. And people have all this love and respect for this guy, and I've seen him do stuff that I'm just like, are you kidding me right now? And then he goes out to the ring and, oh, you know, let's pray before we have this split the pot raffle that I'm going to take, you know, everybody's money on, and just
right.
I'm the asshole. If I ever say anything critical of him, I'm the asshole. So I usually just keep my mouth shut. And then when we were texting back and forth setting this up, and you asked me if I was friends with him or related to him, I'm like, oh no, not at all. We can do whatever we want on that front. But
yeah, so that just came to mind. Anyway.
That's loud. Gene Anderson would have been very proud of that.
Yeah, I had a couple of those instances. I had one when I worked for Savoldi in with a kid by the name of Eric Sprasia. His name was.
Yeah.
He was their light heavyweight champion at the time, and the Savoldis needed to get the strap off of him, and he didn't want to do business, and he didn't want to do business with me, and so we called for a finish, and I went for the finish, and he blocked it. So I just knocked him out and took it. And that was that. And then Doug and I had a couple of characters in Memphis on in TV there in that little studio. And this one goofy rascal didn't know how to work. And I mean, it was bad. And I proceeded to throw him out of the ring and break his ribs so that he couldn't breathe enough to work anymore. Like, leave him out there.
Right.
Because, it was just like, that it's a cooperative business. Yeah. But you got to take care of the people you're working with. And if you're not capable of doing that, then there are consequences. And I apparently was the consequences.
Memphis was always weird like that. Like, they had some enhancement guys that had been around forever and could work, but then some of the guys, it was like they just pulled them off the damn sidewalk out in front of TV5. It's like, what are they doing in the ring? And they just get the hell beat out of them. And then they'd be back next week. It didn't phase them.
Some of them were just awful.
Yeah.
But, there was always, there's always a character here and there.
Before we move completely away from Continental, I do want to ask, so for Memphis, you had your live TV Saturday morning, you had your Monday night card, but now Saturday night in Nashville, you're doing last week's show, and you go do your live Monday night card, and the rest of the week in the other towns, you're doing the show from the other week because the TV's on the bicycle.
Right.
Now, I know Birmingham TV was on Monday nights. How did that process work there? Did they bicycle their tapes? Was it the same kind of thing?
A lot of it depended on where you were and when, but because Birmingham, so Monday was TV, Tuesday, Wednesday were Tuesday was a spot show, Wednesday was some, Wednesday was Meridian and it circulated with a different town. Saturday was Dothan. Friday, Saturday was Dothan, and Sunday was either Panama City, I think, or Montgomery. I mean, you know what I mean? It was like so it all depended on where you were in the loop. So
plus you're shooting 3 TVs at a time too.
Yeah, so and you're shooting at least 3 weeks of TV at once. Yeah. So, you're the thing that was, you got to realize that in those days, and I feel like the old man yelling at the fucking moon. In my day, but in those days, it wasn't. It was more likely than not, there were people in the seats, night after night. They were the same people. Like, you had people that would follow you. So you had to work different every night. You know what I mean? Like, that you couldn't, nowadays they some of these guys, if you watch, any of the TV now, they have one match, and they just kind of, that's their match, and everything they do now is scripted, and it's a high spot fest. That you couldn't do that then. You know what I mean? Like, I'm pretty convinced that I would have no business wrestling today, because I couldn't, jump off of buildings. And, I think the only finish they haven't done yet is somebody gets on the top of the cage, and then the guy on the ground gets out a 38 and shoots him. And then that guy falls dead on top of that guy that shot him. and they count 3. I
Still
think
wins.
that's the only finish they haven't done, but I'm digress.
There was a promotion here in Alabama. It still exists. I don't have anything to do with it these days, but they do that death match wrestling, with the glass and
I
barbed
can't
wire
imagine. No.
all that shit. They were seriously considered. So on one show, they had a guy stab a guy with a box cutter, like
Oh my
legitimately
God.
in his arm right here. And then, and I told the guy that night, the promoter, I'm like, look, when do you get to the point you can't top this shit anymore? Like you've had a stabbing. The only thing that ups the ante on a stabbing is a shooting. What are you going to shoot somebody? And I said that sarcastically. Well, fast forward 3 months later to when their next show is, and he calls me up. He's like, hey man, we was thinking about it. And I got one guy that he's willing to take a shot with a shotgun with some rock salt. He's like, you think that'd mess him up real bad? I'm like, you're kidding, right? And he's like,
Oh my
no,
God.
I mean, we're trying to figure out if this is something we can do. And I was like, man, no, I'm not coming to this. Like, I will not do commentary for this if that's what's happening. They finally, cooler heads prevailed, but they sat down and had like a very serious conversation about, could we pull this off? And I was like,
Oh my God. Yeah, no. Yeah, no. But I mean, that's because you get people that. I mean, I never. So when I get out, I never went back. I mean, literally never went back. I never worked in what. So there's back then we'd call them outlaw shows. Where Dusty Roades was going to be wrestling Ricky Fleazair, or whatever. And like, that, I mean, honestly, Mike Jackson used to run outlaw shows, and that's, I would not work for outlaws. I only worked for, primary, promoters. But, now people don't get a chance to learn how to work anywhere. There's no territories anymore. There's no, people aren't working every night, So you get some of this delusional crazy shit and they're calling it wrestling. And it's just, it's scary because somebody's going to get that. Didn't that guy get killed or something a couple of months ago? Or get seriously injured.
Seriously injured. I don't think he died, but he messed up. It's going to happen. I mean, it's just a matter of time.
It's a matter of time. Yeah.
It's really
somebody so stupid.
Really, God must be a wrestling fan. The fact that nobody's died already for some of the silly stuff that happens. But one last thing from Continental, and then we're going to move to Memphis. Paul Heyman, you talked about Eddie Gilbert. If he was still around, he would probably be, in a creative position. Did you, being around Paul Heyman then, did you think he would go as far in the business as he has?
Oh, yeah. I mean, he had a, what's the word? He had such a deep, desire to, be something, and so you couldn't deny his zest for whatever was next, and I think it was pretty obvious that when, because really right after, it wasn't long after Continental that, the ECW became something, I don't think that was but a year or two later. So,
he went to WCW and had a lot of success there, and then his attitude, because that's what I hear from people, especially interviewing like a lot of Southern guys, that was around him in Continental, different places, like, oh, he's from New York. He thought he was, he was above all this, and he was kind of a prick. Now, I mean, you being from Boston, were you a little more like,
no, I got him. I understood him, Yeah. I mean, I understood him, but he was brilliant. I mean, some of the angles and the way that he put stuff together, and the guy could talk chrome off a trailer hitch. I mean, I thought he was brilliant. I still think he's brilliant.
Him and Eddie did some pretty pretty wild stuff during that stint. You know, they rehashed Eddie's Fabulous One angle with the nightmares, and of course the hanging with Dirty White Boy and Pritchard, and beating up Pez Whatley's kid, which got him a ton of heat.
I had a great program with Pez. They
so good.
Pez and I we tore up the Montgomery Civic Center. I think we sold it out more times than Elvis, but anyway, they had so the promoter owned the TV station, right? And the wrestling was the number one program on the show, on the TV station, and the second one was a dance show that they filmed. It was a local Soul Train, basically, that they filmed live on like Friday nights in a Saturday nights in a nightclub in town.
Wow!
And so Pez and I were getting ready for the blow off of the program, and they never smartened up David Woods. They never smartened up the owner. So he thought the shit was a shoot.
Oh my God.
So he comes to me and he says, Bob, he says, DI, I need you to do I want you to come down to the nightclub, Saturday night on the way home from the show, to talk to Pez and the people and all that. And I said, fuck no. I said, you're going to kill my heat. I said, I'll cut a promo that you can stick in there. And I said, we'll do fine, And so he said, okay. I said, all right. So here was the promo. If you think the DI is coming down there to see Watermelon Willie and his friends, you're out of your mind. And I said, if you want to see me, you come to 5:00, Montgomery Civic Center, blah, blah, blah. Now, but what I'm about to say is not in any way a racial epitaph or whatever, okay? I'm not a racial human being. The black fan in the South loves wrestling. The black fan in the South then didn't buy tickets, but they loved wrestling. Well, 12,000 black fans bought tickets that next night in Montgomery Civic Center, and they wanted to see me die. So then the match stipulation was that the winner whipped the loser with a belt.
Oh. So
what I just said was a black guy and a white guy are going to have a whipping in Montgomery.
Yes.
In 1988.
Yes.
Okay. So the match goes boom, 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 boom. I throw Pez over the top rope. He wins, right? Mm-hmm. Everybody's happy. He's dancing around. He's got a belt, blah, blah, blah. And Randy comes up from under the ring, and we clip him, and I start whipping him. And I start whipping him, and I start whipping him. And back then, if you remember, you had the metal barrier, look like the old big bicycle racks, right?
Yeah.
Well, that was usually like 5 feet out around the ring. Well, 5 feet became 4 feet, and that shit was well on its way to 3 feet. And I looked at Pez and I said, we got to get the fuck out of here. So I popped the belt up like I lost it. Mm-hmm. It goes up. I said, grab it, swing once. So he swung at me. I said, Red Sea finish. And he's like, what? I said, follow me. And so he swings at me and I take off running. And just like the Red Sea, the people parted. And he and I ran to the back, got into the dressing room area, and the state police had to escort me 45 minutes the other side of Montgomery so I could get home.
Wow.
So, but I mean, Pez and I did some good business in around that area.
And people weren't getting that kind of heat in '88 anymore. That's something. That is something right there.
We could heat it up. Randy and I heated it up pretty good. Well, I have one night coming out of Dothan. So Dothan was the big town. You know what I mean? Like we did well there. I mean, we had probably 10,000 people in that friggin' sweltering ass farm center. And so one night, you know how you're in the ring and you can hear certain people's voices either carry or I don't know. So I heard this guy all night, So I had done something dastardly, and I'm leaving the ring and I'm walking down the aisle and I hear somebody behind me. I got something for you, motherfucker. And I just reacted. I wasn't thinking. I just reacted. Yeah. And I put my elbow up and I caught the guy right up under the chin and knocked him out. So I just kept going. I didn't even pay attention. I just kept going.
Yeah.
I get to the dressing room. I'm taking my boots off and the constable comes in. He says, you're coming with me. I said, who? He said, you. I said, me? He goes, yeah. I said, for what? He said, you assaulted a patron. I said, well, let's go have a look. So we go out and this guy's on the deck on his back with his hand in his right hand pocket. I said, well, take his hand out of his pocket. Let's have a look. He had a knife in his hand, a 4-inch blade. I said, I won't be pressing charges, but I would like to meet him out back. And constable said, get out of here. So, but I mean, there was the stuff got real.
Yeah. Yeah. Even then, there were still some folks like that took it to heart, and it wasn't safe a lot of times. No. So how do we get from Alabama to Memphis?
Well, when Eddie called and said that he was leaving Continental, pretty much it was going to be closing, arguably. I don't really know what happened at that point. I just knew that, I was loyal to Eddie, and thought I'll just, so I said, can you get me in anywhere? Because there wasn't much left, in '89, there wasn't much left. Mm-mm. And so he said, yeah, he said, well, I'll get you into Memphis. I said, okay. So I was in the Carolinas. I went back to Nelson's. I was staying at Nelson's, and I had a car, a Grand Marquis, yellow Grand Marquis, and I was coming on I-40 heading to Memphis to go to work, and I had to be at TV at a certain time.
Right.
And I driving down the left lane on I-40 somewhere between Knoxville and Nashville, and the tire comes off my car, and I go down into the median, which was like a hill, like a big hill, and I tilled up enough ground you probably could have planted corn. Dang. And get to the bottom there, and finally it comes to rest. And I end up selling that car to the state trooper for $200 and a bus ticket to Memphis.
Wow.
Because everything I owned was in that car. So I just, whatever I could fit in the bag, I took it. And I think I sent a bag on the bus. I bought a bus ticket for a bag and sent it to my mom's in Boston. And I did, when I took what I needed to go to work. right? So I get into Memphis, go to the dressing room, and checked in. Here I am, jabroni without a car, and I hooked up with then Mark Calloway.
Oh yeah, he was there.
And I ended up staying with him for the time that I was in Memphis.
Wow.
It was me, him, would have been Papa Shango, I think, at the time, or some version of that was what he was doing.
Yeah, I think he was Soul Taker at that point.
Soul Taker, yeah, that's
they
right.
Made him Papa Shango when he went up north.
Yeah, and there was like 4 or 5 of us in a 1-bedroom apartment in Nashville. I slept under the kitchen table.
Living the dream, right?
Oh, what a dream. What a dream I was living. Yeah. So yeah,
Well,
then I went there and they did a couple of vignettes, and Doug came in and they put Doug and I together, and we had a few matches, and at that point the miles and the money were starting not to make any sense.
Yeah.
So as an example, all right, so Saturday morning, you'd wake up at 0:30. You would drive 250 plus miles to Memphis to do TV for free.
Yeah.
Then you drive back 250 that day to go to Nashville to the farm. What do they call it? The fairgrounds. You wrestle there Saturday night. Sunday morning, you'd go back to back on the other side of Memphis to Little Rock, or whatever one of those Arkansas towns.
Yeah.
And then you'd stay at the Admiral Benbow Inn in lovely downtown Memphis. And then you'd work Memphis on Monday, and then you'd drive back to Nashville, and then you'd do Louisville on Tuesday. Wednesday was Henderson, Kentucky. Thursday was some spot show somewhere. Friday was some spot show somewhere, and then you did it again. And so at that, I had recently been in, when I was in Charlotte, I owned, Gene Ligon, myself, and Nikita Koloff owned 3 gyms called Nikita's Gym. And when I was promoting the gym, I got a chance to meet Roman Gabriel, the old quarterback, and Roman got me hooked into golf, and I was playing in some tournaments. And Roman called me one day when I was in Memphis, and he said, could you play in a tournament such and such a day, in Rocky Mount, North Carolina? I said, well, dude, I'm in Memphis. He said, well, I'll fly you. I said, well, where are you going to fly me back to? And he said, Memphis? I go, how about Boston? I said, I'm retiring. And I did. I literally quit that day and never went back.
A lot of careers started in Memphis, but more careers ended in Memphis. Like we do a weekly review podcast of old Memphis shows, and you'll see guys come in on a Saturday morning, and sometimes by the next Monday night card, but at least after like the second one, after a week or two on that loop, and they get that first paycheck, and they're like, "No, we can't do this." And you can't blame them. I mean, like you said, it doesn't add up.
It was hard, man. That was hard. Especially, I didn't have a car. I mean, it was hard. It was hard, but it was fun. The hardest I was ever hit in my life was in Memphis.
Who did that?
I was working the Mid-South. I forget who I was working with. I threw him out into the floor. Went out to get him. Was picking him up, and I feel this whack. I mean, oh my God. Tingled me right down to my toes. Turned around, I was going to lay out whoever it was, and it was this 73-year-old woman with a cane. She had I forget her name, she knocked the living shit out of me.
And I'm guessing she's one of those that was there every week, and everybody's like,
every week.
"Oh, that's
Yeah.
just old so and so." She does that from time to time.
Yeah, she was grandfathered in, but
Literally.
yeah, that was fun. I really wish I could have had more time there. I think
It was a rough time in Memphis at that time. Like,
well, it was I
like
mean,
said,
but
timing
business
was bad.
the business was bad. I mean, the timing for the business was bad because it was, I mean, at that point, Vince was absolutely swallowing territories, and I mean, I remember talking to Strongbow, trying to get into New York, and I mean, I understand it now that, like my work wasn't ready, my character might have been ready. My character work might have been ready. Like I could have done any character, but I needed another couple more years of, good territories,
Yeah. So I forgot to ask that in '88. During that time in Continental, you went up and did some matches up for the WWF. How was that experience? Like seeing that big machine and then going to Memphis a short time later and be like, oh my gosh, this is
I did like 3 TVs for them. I was in like Salisbury, Maryland, or whatever. I think I worked with Jake Roberts.
I've seen that match.
Yeah, it's hell to have seen that match. Every country club I've ever worked at has seen that match. Because I got some of the golf pros I've worked for. They've taken great pleasure in fucking with me on that. I worked with Hacksaw Duggan, and I worked a tag match with, I think it was the Barbarian and Warlord or something. Anyway, I don't remember who that was. Anyway, I was lucky. I didn't have to work with the Road Warriors or Ultimate Warrior.
Oh my God.
I would have. I think I'd have left. I'd probably have quit. Because that Ultimate Warrior hurt everybody he ever got in the ring with. But so I went up there, and they paid me. I needed money, and they paid me, and that was in between Alabama and Memphis.
Right. So I knew it was in that general time for 89 Memphis. I have to ask, do you have any funny Ronnie P. Gossett stories that you either witnessed or heard while you were there?
No, he was actually, if I remember right, he was managing Taker then.
Yeah.
So now I can't think of anything that was, particularly funny. I never really felt like I wasn't there really long enough to, kind of get in the flow of what was going on.
Of course, the most famous Ronnie P. Gossett story was when he sold Nick Goulis's territory to somebody, and he had no ownership stake in it at all. He found this old people, and they bought it from him for even back then in like the late 70s, they paid him like $250,000, and they show up at Goulis's office like, well, we're here to take over. And Nick Goulis is like, what are you talking about? Like, yeah, we bought the territory. And then he's like, what? And like, Ronnie Gossett sold us, like, they gave him this bill of sale or whatever. It took him forever to track Ronnie down. I don't think they ever did get the money back out of him. But
oh my God, that's funny. I didn't know that one.
Yeah, that's the one.
I need to get Doug and that would be fun to get on a podcast with him.
Yeah.
I think that would be
we can make that happen. Yeah, I'll get with Doug and we'll figure out a time. that works for everybody and get y'all together. That would be fun to have y'all on there and talk about Continental and Memphis and some of the times y'all had.
Yeah, we would probably end up both crying at some point because we both miss his brother.
Yeah. He I helped him write a book about Eddie last year that we put out, and it's done pretty well. But man, that was my big takeaway. Hanging out with him and talking about things for the book and everything is just how much he cared about Eddie, and I mean they were more like best friends than his brother.
Yeah.
And I know that he's never quite fully recovered from losing him. And
we had his dad down there too. His dad came in as Freddy Krueger, right. And I mean, Tommy was a pro, man. Tommy was a pro.
I got a chance to be around him at a couple of shows in Mississippi, like around 98, 9, somewhere in there. And like you said, he was such a pro, and you look back at his career and just one of those no nonsense, just workers, he's out there having good wrestling matches. So to me, it's always, I have trouble wrapping my head around that the Tommy Gilbert that I'm familiar with played Freddy Krueger later in his career. Cause at one point in his career, Tommy would have been like, fuck you, I ain't playing Freddy Krueger. What are you talking about?
Yeah, that was fun. That was fun. And then we had John, we had Eddie's friend, John, who he beat.
John Gillum.
John Gillum. Oh my God, he beat the hell out of him. We did some fun shit.
Were you there in Dothan? So, they had on TV, they did the angle where Eddie picked him out of the crowd for the $25,000 golden challenge. And of course he pile drives him and whips him with his belt and the whole 9 yards. And then Eddie told the story on that shoot interview he did with Bob Barnett, where they had, on a Saturday night in Dothan, they had advertised it was going to be Hot Stuff Eddie Gilbert in the main event versus Mr. Dothan.
Yeah.
And he had that angle had happened, but he'd also done some stuff with Austin Idol, and everybody thought, it's going to be Austin Idol. It's going to be Austin Idol. And so the story goes, and Doug confirmed this, like all week long, like Paul and Missy and everybody's like, who's Mr. Dothan? Who's Mr. Dothan? Eddie's like, you'll see. And so they get there that night, and they're all looking around the dressing room trying to figure out who would be Mr. Dothan. And finally, it's like intermission before the main event, and Eddie says, he looks at Doug and says, go get John Gillum. And Doug goes, what? He goes, go get John Gillum. So they bring John in, and they put like Mr. Olympia's masks on him and Danny Davis's tights and Tom Pritchard's boots, and they get him dressed like a wrestler. And Eddie goes out to Hot Stuff by Donna Summer, and he's in the ring, and they're like, and now Mr. Dothan. And here comes John Gillum in this get-up. And he said as he was going out, Doug's like, you're going to kill the town, dude. And Heyman's like, you're crazy. You're killing the whole town tonight. But it was all just a ruse. They start the match, and, he's getting the better of Gillum. And then, unbeknownst to everybody, Idol's in his car out back, and Idol comes in with the freaking axe handle, and cleans house. But initially, like I said, the whole crowd groaned because they're like, we paid to see this guy in a mask wrestle Eddie Gilbert. But I think that's just hilarious.
Yeah, that was
kind of mind he had. Like you said, he was ahead of his time.
He was way ahead of his time, man. He was way ahead of his time. But that was good stuff.
I hate I took up this much of your time, man.
Yeah,
I tried to keep these things to an hour, but we were rolling along and having a good time, so I just wanted to keep it going. But thank you so much for doing this, man. It's been a pleasure, and just honored to have you on the show, man.
Thank you, buddy. Good to finally connect with you. And if there's anything I can do for you, you got my number.
Absolutely, man. Like I said, I'll get with Doug. I'll reach out. We'll get you on the Dangerous Conversations one of these days as well. And if there's ever anything I can do for you, man, let me know. I'll be happy to help.
Thanks, pal. Take it easy.
Yes, sir. You too. Thanks.
Got a stack of VHS tapes, dusty old newsletters, dusting men in tiny capes, playing old video games. His basement a shrine to the past. chaos, wrestling's glory.